All right, welcome everyone, and my name is Whitney Miller. I am a staff member with Illinois Digital Educators Alliance, and I am happy to introduce the Edmentum team. Jason, do you want to start, and you folks can introduce yourselves, and we can get started from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Whitney, thank you very much for having us. We're thrilled to be with you all today. My name is Jason Eggert. I'm a partnership manager for Edmentum. And I live up in Crystal Lake, Illinois, so along the, or in McHenry County, which is along the Wisconsin border, so way up here in northern Illinois, one of the collar counties around Cook County. Meredith, I'll send it to you.
Thanks, Jason. Sure. My name is Meredith Whittick. I am also a partnership manager with Edmentum. I am actually down a little further south of the city, and I'm in Tinley Park here and support many of our district partners throughout Illinois, and really happy to be here as well. And I'm going to kick it over to our other colleague, Trudy.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Great.
Yeah.
My name's Trudy Van Dusen, and I am also a partnership manager. I work in Illinois and Wisconsin, and I actually am based in Geneva. And really excited to meet you all, and I think we're ready to get started. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this afternoon. We are excited to share this webinar with you. And to start, to show our appreciation, we have a giveaway that we'd like to share with you. We are to show our appreciation for Teacher Appreciation Week. We are giving away $500 Target gift cards to 2 lucky educators. It is not just on this webinar, unfortunately, because that would be amazing odds. It is actually for all teachers. So if you actually want to share the link that is on the screen right there, you can go ahead and do that and share that with your colleagues. And you have until May 31st to enter. And another little tidbit here at Edmentum, we like to use transition words, and our transition word is idea. So we've already done our introductions, so idea. Thank you. Okay, so our learning objectives for today, the whole learner. And we'd also like you to be able to identify strategies for incorporating SEL into your daily work. Based on these learning objectives, what are you most looking forward to learning about today? Basically, what do you hope to take away from this webinar? And if a few of you could maybe enter that in the chat, that would be great. Like when you walk away from here, what would you like to learn? Maybe something that you don't know yet about SEL. Anybody?
All right, who's going to be the brave one to come off of mute?
Exactly.
Tell us, why you joined today, aside from getting credits?
I'm really interested in strategies that I can put into play in my classroom right now. My students are, they're done. They're done for the year. Plus, with COVID and everything, they have not, they just lack social skills. I teach junior high, and oh my goodness, they don't even know how to move through the hallways together. So I'd like to make them care a little bit more. Try, anyway.
I love it. Thank you for coming off of mute there, Kathy, and being brave. There are a couple more in the chat here. Leslie says, how to incorporate it into a classroom for transition learners who are older than typical K-12. And Amber says, how can you make SEL authentic?
I like that, Amber. Yeah. Great. Those are some really good things. Thank you. Idea to the next slide.
Give me just a quick second. I'm going to share my screen again, and I want to make sure that I share my sound as well for the next slide. All right, go ahead, Trudy.
Perfect. Okay, so we want to share this short video to sort of get you set up for this webinar. As you watch, think about your life, your interactions, and most importantly, the children that come to your schools every day. So let's go ahead and watch.
Once I hit the play button here, folks, if you could just give me a thumbs up to make sure that you can hear the sound, that'd be greatly appreciated. All right. Of course, that's not working properly. All right. Let me go to a backup plan here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let me see if I can find it. Give me 1 second here, folks.
I think after all this time, I can't believe there's yet another sharing bit that I haven't tried yet. This is definitely new to us.
Jason, I put the URL in the chat that links directly to the video.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. See
Yep.
if I can pull that up here real quick. Let's see.
I can summarize it.
Yep, I've got it coming up here in just a quick second. All right. All right, folks. All right. Now let me know if you can hear the sound.
I am not.
All right.
But, you know, there are words on there, so if everyone just kind of wants to follow along with the words, we could do that, maybe.
Or I could give a quick summary. Basically, it's sort of, you don't know what other people are going through. You don't know what your students are necessarily always going through. So when you're going about your day, when you're going about your school day, you have no idea what argument your student had last night with a parent. You have no idea what's coming up in their life that they're stressed about. It's just always important to realize and be sensitive to that you don't always know what is going on in someone else's life or in someone else's mind, especially with your students. So that's just kind of a little setup. It was a great video. Sorry it's not working, but we can go ahead and move on. Idea.
Thanks, Trudy. I'm back. Sorry.
Go ahead, Meredith. It's to you.
Thank you. All right. So where I want to pick up here is we're going to talk a little bit about what is SEL, and we're going to talk a little bit about what is the whole learner and where does SEL fit into that concept of the whole learner. As many of you might know, SEL has sort of become a bit of a buzzword, really, I think, since the pandemic. And I think some people might have different ideas of what SEL really means, So I just want to take some time to really level set and talk about, from our perspective, what SEL is and what SEL isn't. So one thing it isn't is it really shouldn't be one more thing to do. I know you're like, great, I got to give this assessment and I have to lesson plan and I have to do this and I have to do that. And now I have to worry about SEL as well. But true SEL really is rooted in the science of how our brain works. It's strength-based. It's driven by equity. As the video and Trudy kind of pointed out, it should be sensitive to trauma and look at wellness in a larger sense and really look at how we understand ourselves and what that means for all of our interactions that we have on a daily basis, not just with students, but with our school leaders, with each other, with our family members. So it's really not about policing, but more just about transformation. And it's not, as I just said, population specific, but SEL really is for everyone. And building SEL skills that can support mental health and wellness and the development of a culture of connection will ultimately lead to greater academic success for your students. So, if you are burnt out and struggling, it's going to be hard for you probably to support your students. So SEL for teachers is just as important as SEL for our students. So let's look a little bit more formally. If you want to wave or, give a thumbs up, I'm not sure if thumbs up is a feature, but just to kind of let us know if you are familiar with CASEL. But CASEL is the Collaborative for Academics and Social Emotional Learning. And they are kind of the experts on SEL. And they recently evolved their definition in 2020, and this is their definition of SEL. Social and emotional learning is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply their knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. So that's a lot in one definition there. So let's kind of break it down a little bit and look at the CASEL wheel of competencies. And Jason, I keep forgetting to say idea. I knew I was going to do that, but thank you for keeping up with me. All right. So as you can see, the core competencies, which are almost in the center there, are surrounded by communities, families, schools, the classroom, which really reminds us that the most effective way to promote SEL is to integrate it into every part of students' daily lives. So across all of their classrooms, during all times of the school day, whether they're in PE or whether they're in reading class or art or music, and also when they're in their homes and their communities. So it's also important for caregivers to understand the impact of social emotional learning. So it really requires a coordinated systemic approach that, really starts with district leaders and school leaders, principals, teachers, families, community partners, and other stakeholders that are in the community. So it's not something that is just going to happen overnight. This type of integration really takes time and collaboration. So, I would highly encourage you to look into your district, or if you are a district leader, to kind of see what sort of, initiatives you have around making sure that, SEL is a priority in your district. And then you'll see the competencies are there in the middle: self-management, social awareness, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills. These are all meant to prepare students for long-term success in life and to become responsible, caring members of our multicultural society. Idea. So what does SEL look like in schools? And this rubric here is just one example of what SEL could look like. And it was created by our experts at Edmentum. What you'll notice about this rubric is the CASEL competencies are listed on the left, and then what that looks like for the student, the teacher, and administrator is over there to the right. So again, it's really important to note that SEL is for all. So for example, if an administrator is having difficulty managing emotions in ways that might allow them to create a safe building, allowing them to be present for learning and listening to the needs of those they support, that obviously will ultimately have an impact on teachers and students as well. So, we have to provide support for everyone. Idea. So now let's take a look at the whole learner model. And in particular, we're going to talk about where SEL fits into the whole learner model. Idea? So we have this beautiful graphic that, again, our SEL experts here at Edmentum has created. And here at Edmentum, we believe that the whole learner model is rooted in basic needs. It's nurtured by relationships. It flourishes with support in executive function and social emotional learning, and then is nourished by proven academic programs that ensure successful student outcomes. And one of the things we recently added to our graphic here is that big sun for equity. And, equity really is at the core of SEL. And as research around the brain has evolved, it's become clear that learning happens more effectively when all parts of a person's needs are addressed. So all parts of, this tree are being addressed. So first and foremost, learners need to be safe and fed. They need to feel connected with an individualized understanding of their needs. And executive functioning and SEL really lay the foundation for their focus, memory, goal setting, organizational skills, and form a foundation for academic success. And ultimately, it's infused, as I said, with equity. So it's really foundational to academic and lifelong success. Idea. So the whole learner model is truly rooted in Maslow, and successful learning can only thrive. Can everyone still hear me okay? Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure. Jason, can you move to the next slide, please?
This one right here? This one right here?
Yes,
okay.
Thank you. Maybe I didn't yell loud enough, I don't think. All right. So the whole learner model, as I said, is really rooted here at the base of our tree in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So successful learning can only thrive if the roots are tended to. Hungry children can't learn effectively. And this is where Maslow, really comes in there before your Bloom's taxonomy. Idea? Thank you. And then the trunk of the tree is all about relationships. So strong, as you'll see in this graphic here, stronger developmental relationships have, studies have shown are clearly linked to higher academic motivation. And just pause and think for a moment about a teacher that made an impact in your life. And as you reflect on that teacher, was it because of the academic content you learned from them, or was it more because of the relationship or connection you had with them? And as I was working on this PowerPoint, I paused and thought about the same thing myself. And it was definitely a teacher that I connected with, that saw value in me, saw promise in me, and I probably couldn't tell you much of what I learned from them all the way back in high school, which was the teacher I was thinking of. Idea.
Do you want to talk about this at all here, Meredith?
The research?
Yes.
You know, I guess I kind of skipped that, but basically what that is showing there is that the research does show that students who have a stronger sense of connection also then are going to grow and flourish more academically. Thanks, Jason.
Yep, you got it.
Did kind of skip through that.
No, that's okay.
All right. Now we are. Okay, thank you. All right, and then we get to the canopy of the tree. And this is really where that whole learner branches out. And this circle is really less about each individual area and more about sort of the overarching, SEL and how it works together. So executive functioning really refers to students' working memory, their inhibitory control, and their cognitive flexibility. And these are really important skills that actually students do need to work on, and students do need to practice and learn in order to grow in these skills. And then, of course, we also have your SEL, which is your, these are your CASEL 5 competencies. Idea. Oh, thanks, Jason. Idea again. I didn't realize it had all the clicks in it. I'm cheating and looking at my slide deck, not his, so I'm sorry if there's a little lack of coordination there.
It's when PowerPoint slide transitions come back and get you, right? That's
yeah, exactly.
What we're experiencing here. How's everybody doing here so far? Feedback, impressions thus far on the idea of social emotional learning, what it is, our definition at Edmentum about, or our definition of the whole learner. Thoughts, feedback. Anybody who'd like to chat anything in or come off of mute, we'd love to hear your feedback.
Jason, I've just put in the chat, I really, really like that graphic. I think it represents well. I feel like sometimes I don't do a good job of being able, I asked about how do you integrate SEL authentically, and I really think that graphic captures what I was looking for. So thank you so much for capturing that. I'm going to hopefully get your permission to use it in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to hear you, Amber. And I know I didn't mention this earlier, but Amber and I do share a little bit of a similar background from a school counseling standpoint. So before I joined the Edmentum team, it's been almost 6 years now. My last stop in education was as an elementary school principal, but before that I was a school counselor for 4 years. So Amber and I share a little bit of a background. So this topic is certainly near and dear to my heart, and something that we have really identified as a company as a priority moving forward. And that's really what led to that graphic. So Amber, I'm glad that you found that to be useful, or a good representation of the whole learner. Other thoughts, feedback on the whole learner or on social emotional learning?
Jason, sorry, you're totally right. I mean, I know you and I could sit here and talk forever on this topic. I'm just looking at what, Kathy put in, and truly, especially that relationship piece, and thinking about it from the terms of the graphic, you can't even get to the relationship piece if those basic needs aren't met. But even taking it a step further, I worked in a district where there were very, very successful families, and that expectation was put on the students. So I even come from the perspective of these students who don't outwardly show that they're struggling, but are very internally struggling with,
I have to get perfect scores, straight A's, etc. And I think that's just why I love the whole the SEL approach, because it really is meeting the needs of those students who you may not even realize are struggling, from the relationship piece or those basic needs pieces as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. The idea of it being rooted in those basic needs, food, shelter, and then really then that next step is the relationship, are the relationships. And this is just going back to the research that Meredith was talking about earlier. The idea of developmental relationships and the fact that stronger developmental relationships are linked to higher academic motivation. The study is cited down there at the bottom of the screen, if you are so inclined. But again, the idea is that the more embedded that adolescents are in family networks, the higher their grade point averages, the less likely they are to smoke, use marijuana, get drunk, commit acts of major deviance. Regardless of race, the more embedded in school-based networks, the higher the GPAs, and again, the less likely they are to make what would be considered poor decisions. And it really is also not only the connections, of course, that you all are making on a daily basis with your students, and please don't ever discount the importance of those relationships, those high fives, those handshakes that you give to kids as they enter and exit your room. When you're asking them about their day, when you're showing interest in something that it is that they're doing outside of their time with you in the classroom. If you attend a theater performance or an art show, or you go to a sporting event for a student, all of those things absolutely matter, and they really show that you want to connect with the kids on a number of different levels in order to really help them achieve their goals and succeed. So again, this is a graphic. These are some data that would again suggest what I think would be a common conception, which of course is the importance of relationships. And hey, I don't need to say idea because I'm the one who is controlling the slide deck, so I'm good to go. I'm driving. One technique, I'm just going to go over a couple of different techniques. I know that this was something that one of you had mentioned in the chat earlier, or maybe when you had come off mute, just some practical ways, some different things that you can do in order to promote social and emotional learning in the classroom, in the school where you work. The idea of really focusing on relationships, that's one thing that is absolutely important and applicable. And one way that you can connect with kids, and another strategy that you can use would be the idea of rephrasing. So finding, again, ways to connect with students. So using phrases such as, what happened? Instead of, something like, what's wrong with you? Or better. Using a phrase like, boy, that's really bothering you, showing that you have observed something. How can I help you? How did that make you feel? That idea of getting their feedback and then reframing that, rephrasing that, reflecting that back on them. This is a perfect opportunity to show empathy in the classroom, in the school, in the school setting. Using a phrase such as, it's hard to turn off that game. How can I help, right? Instead of stop it or cut it out. Let's try a different approach. Hey, you seem distracted. How can I help? Instead of things like try harder and focus. Many of the phrases that are on the left-hand side of that screen are probably phrases that are said on a daily basis in the Eggert house. So it's almost as if someone was listening to conversations that I was having with my own children in my own home. What are your impressions? What are your thoughts as you see some of these rephrases up here on the screen?
I like the rephrases. I can see myself doing both sides there. Sometimes I say the wrong thing, and sometimes I say the right thing. Yeah,
Patty, thank you, and I appreciate you showing courage and coming off of mute. Thanks for sharing. And I don't know that Patty, I don't know that it's necessarily the right or the wrong. Sometimes it can be a combination of both. Sometimes a student might need perhaps something a little bit from what would be considered the left-hand column, but then they also might need later on something from the right-hand column. So it might be finding that right balance for that one student. Mm-hmm. One of the metaphors that I remembered hearing a long time ago that has really, really stuck with me is the idea of a bank account. And at any given moment, you want to make sure that a child's bank account is in the black as opposed to the red. So for every time that you need to redirect a student, for every time that you would need to perhaps use something from the left-hand column, the idea then would be to replenish that withdrawal with at least one deposit back into that bank account to be able to make sure that they're in the black by the end of the day. So if it's a redirect, then making sure that you get at least one, if not two, positive comments, one or two acknowledgments of positive behavior that you're seeing. Probably back to those PBIS training days back in my former life as an in the classroom, in the school educator. Patty, thank you for that feedback. Other thoughts from the information that's here on the screen?
I try to use those connecting statements like, how can I help? What seems to be the trouble? And the kids kind of blow me off like, what would help me would be let us play a game instead of do this work. Oh, I know, I love to play games. Maybe we'll have time for that later, but it just feels soft enough that the kids don't take it seriously.
Sure. Thanks, Kathy. Appreciate you saying that. Feedback for Kathy on that. Sometimes too, Kathy, it might be a situation where, there is that, I guess you could say, exchange of items, meaning where, and again, and Kathy, I think you mentioned earlier that you work with middle school students. Was that? Yeah. Middle school students, they are certainly going through a lot of different kinds of things, both physically, mentally, just the idea of adolescence in general, is challenging. That idea of, I like how you said that right there. Boy, yeah, it'd be great if we could play games all the time. At the same time, I know that if we can do this, then, perhaps there is time for us to do something like that later on down the road. Or if you do this for me, if we do this together, then we can do something, that you would like to do. But yeah, I like how you phrased that. And even sometimes, Kathy, the attempt is really what matters. The idea that you're hearing and that you're listening and that you understand that, yeah, boy, that'd be great if we could, play Xbox all day long. But at the same time, I know that for me personally, there are bills that need to be paid in the house. So there are things that have to be done in order for us to be able to do the things later on that we want to do. So it's kind of striking that balance. So we talked a little bit about relationships. We talked a little bit about rephrasing, connecting with kids on that social and emotional level. Another, I guess you could say, practical example of an activity that I really like this one. Jen Perry, who is our learning designer at Edmentum for social and emotional learning, she's fantastic. She has a background in trauma-informed instruction, and she's worked with alternative schools. She's been an administrator in alternative schools for a number of years. She's worked with kids who have had behavioral challenges, but she's also worked with kids that are, on that gifted and talented end of the spectrum too. So she was not able to join us here today, but this is an activity, and some of this presentation that we're actually sharing with you today was one that we did back at the III conference this past fall when Jen came up to Chicago and we presented on social and emotional learning. But this DOT project is really something that I thought was particularly interesting. And really this DOT project can be done by the adults or by the adults in the building. This DOT project can also be done by the students. But the idea is that you would put a list of students, perhaps in a classroom or at a grade level or at the middle school, Kathy, junior high level on a team, and you could put all the list of the students. And what what the teachers can do is they can put a check mark or a dot next to all of the students where they feel that they have a connection with them in some way, shape, or form. And then flip the script, have the students do the same thing, and then be able to say, okay, these are all the teachers who are on my team, or these are all the teachers or the adults that are in the elementary school building. These are all the folks in the English department or in the math department at the high school level. And then have the students identify with which adults do you feel that you have a connection, and then be able to look at the overlay between those two things, and then be able to say, okay, well, Tiffany Baumgartner, as an example, she was able to report that she had a connection with someone. However, the teachers identified, or were not able to, none of the teachers said that they had a relationship or a connection with Tiffany. Or a student like Christopher, where you've got no reported connections from either the teachers or the students. The power in this, of course, is not only, of course, whether we as the adults feel that we have connections with the students, but really on the right-hand side, the very right-hand side of the screen, which is the students. Can the students report that they have a connection with people? Meredith mentioned it earlier. Thinking back to a teacher who made an impression on you as you were growing up, and it wasn't necessarily probably the content that they were teaching or the subject area that they were covering, but it was really that connection that they had. So it's really the fact that the student's impression of the connection or lack thereof is really where the rubber hits the road. What do you guys think when you see or you hear about a strategy or an activity like this?
Well, I think it'd be interesting to do. And it seems like a little sad, the ones who report that they have no connection. It's probably just maybe the quiet kids. I'm not really sure.
Sure.
But it would be interesting to do. I'd be interested in seeing what the students had to say.
Sure. To that point, Patty, and this really goes out to the group at large, what would be your response? How would your team, whether it's your grade level team or your middle school team or your administration or your student services department, how do you think they would respond if they saw, something like Christopher's situation come up, where neither the adults nor Christopher himself is able to identify connections?
Yeah, I think we'd work on it in a team meeting, and say, let's see who can somebody kind of relate to this kid, and let's make sure he at least has one connection.
Sure. Absolutely. Another, we've talked a little bit about some qualitative ways. I would say that the DOT project would sort of count as maybe a little bit qualitative, but also somewhat quantitative in nature. One program that we provide at Edmentum, we have a partnership with a company called Base Education, and they have their own digital SEL curriculum. And as part of their SEL curriculum, they have what's called their baseline assessment, which is a 15-minute formative assessment, which really is connected to those CASEL competencies. And it's designed to track progress with social and emotional learning over time. And kind of think a little bit about what's the next step for the students in their journey within their social and emotional learning. And then they can use the results of that assessment to really determine which courses within BASE might be particularly helpful for a student or perhaps a group of students. And if you guys can see my screen up here, this will kind of give you an idea as to a sample of what one of those reports might look like. So again, you can see here that the four areas that were assessed within baseline were connected to behavioral infraction, engagement, academic self-confidence, and social connectivity in school. And based on this demo student, this fictional student, if we click on any one of these different items here, we can see the questions that were given along with the answer that was given by the student. So, for example, in the last month of school, how often did you break school and classroom rules? And the answer from the student was often. In the last month of school, how often did you tease other students? Often. And then it gives you kind of a general insight as to what's going on for the student in this category of behavioral infraction. But again, you can also see that as far as academic self-confidence is concerned, the student might make poor choices from a behavioral standpoint and might find themselves in the office quite frequently for negative reasons. But the student is very confident and can achieve most goals that they set and do an excellent job on many tasks. And again, you can see the statements and the questions and the answers from that student. And then again, you can see a list of recommended courses within BASE that might be appropriate for the student. So again, a quantitative way to take a look at where the students are in their own social and emotional learning journey. Thoughts on that or feedback? So that's one concrete way that we at Edmentum are really incorporating social and emotional learning into what it is that we're doing. Another example that I'm going to show for you here in just a second. Give me just a second. I'll get back down here to where we left off. Sorry about this, folks. ExactPath is another one of our programs. It provides diagnostic assessments in math, reading, and language arts, and then it gives students learning paths that follow based on strengths and weaknesses. This is an example of one of the lessons that we've recently created within ExactPath. And again, this is another way, again, one more example of a way that we are incorporating social and emotional learning, or a way, I guess you could say, to crosswalk between core academic content and social and emotional learning. So this is an example of a unit from our world history course, which is in courseware, one of our other programs at Edmentum, digital curriculum materials for students in grades 6 through 12. You can see that this is really looking at imperialism, the idea of imperialism, and World War I, and how these activities along the left-hand side here and the summary itself can be linked to the idea of all or nothing thinking. The idea of imperialism and the idea of conquering countries. I mean, gosh, we're living that right now with what's happening in the Ukraine. The idea of we must have it all, and how that kind of can be connected to this concept of all or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking is, again, one of our courses within BASE. And what you'll see here, the idea of taking those objectives and those standards and bringing those back to, say, a teaching guide that goes along with all or nothing thinking, and all the BASE courses, they're really designed for students to consume independently, or perhaps even in a small group with a social worker, a school counselor, school psychologist. But they also have instructional versions. And this is a rundown of what the lesson includes, along with all of the text that is included. And again, this is an example of a lesson that is CASEL aligned and CASEL approved, and how you could take all of these concepts and overlay those along with concepts that are being presented that you are covering and discussing from a core academic lens. When you think about the idea of connecting what it is that you're doing from an academic standpoint to social and emotional learning, what are your immediate thoughts and feelings about that?
I really like it because I teach special ed. I have a lot of kids with behavior disorders, and it's really hard to teach anything because of those. So tying in, some social and emotional with what I'm teaching would be a good plan.
Thank you, Patty. It's hard though, right? I think it's hard, to keep those things in mind. I think that, as your, you in your classroom, you as a team or as a grade level, you in your building or you in your district, if you know that social emotional learning is a priority for you, the idea of taking lesson plans, curriculum materials, things that are focused on social emotional learning, taking those concepts and finding ways, using that old Venn diagram to find that area in the middle where there is overlap between concepts that you're presenting in reading or language arts or English, and applying those, characters that you're reading about in stories and how social and emotional learning can be connected there. It is a great way. One of our colleagues in Illinois talks about the idea of hiding the vegetables. It's a great way to hide the vegetables within what it is that you're already doing. All right. We are just about wrapping up here. We've got about 5 more minutes left. I'm going to get here to our additional resources. We do, at Edmentum, have an Edmentum Illinois YouTube channel. If you were to take your device and click this QR code that's right up there on your screen, it's going to take you to our Edmentum Illinois YouTube channel. As of today, we have 95 subscribers. I know that you're all very impressed with the number of subscribers that we have. I know that you guys are all influencers, so that's probably not a very big number for you. But anyway, as I look across the screen here, if all of you subscribe, we might get to triple digits here by the end of the day. So if you take a look here, you'll see a wide variety of different materials that are on our YouTube channel, videos that were created by Meredith, videos that are created by me, videos are created by all of us together. But we're particularly proud of the educator interviews that are on our YouTube channel, where we're really taking time to talk with educators across the state of Illinois, talk about things that they're doing and trying in their classrooms. You'll even see Lindsay has a segment on our YouTube channel. Amber has a segment on our YouTube channel from IDEA. Whitney, just wait. We'll be tapping your shoulder next to be a guest on our YouTube channel. But anyway, we're particularly proud of all of our educator interviews. The idea of keeping people connected through the pandemic was particularly important to us. So you'll see a library of all of those short educator interviews, and some of them are pretty fun too. You'll also see some things that are on there about some of our programs, features, functionality, and so forth. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look at that. Please make sure that you follow Meredith on Twitter, follow me on Twitter. We put a lot of great things out there. We're going to get Trudy on Twitter here in the not too distant future. So that's my plug for that. All of the resources, or I shouldn't say all of them, actually supplemental resources that are around the idea of the whole learner and social emotional learning. Meredith was fantastic. She put a Padlet together that has links to all of those resources, and this QR code will take you to that page, which is a Padlet of additional resources on social emotional learning and the whole learner.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. It really makes, every time I am on with you guys, I always miss my former classrooms a lot. So thank you so much for everything that you guys are doing. I